Hello, thank you for listening. My name is Johann Richter, but everyone who ever mattered just called me Hans. I want to tell you a story from a time when I was just 24 years old, though I felt 100. Before the war, my world was quiet. It had a rhythm. It was the rich, dark soil of Brandenburg under my fingernails, the scent of ozone just before a summer storm, the heft of a potato in my palm. I was a farmer. My Bible was the almanac, my prayers were for rain, and my faith was in the simple, honest logic of the land. You plant a seed, you tend the earth, you guard it from blight, and in time it gives back. It's a contract, a promise between man and dirt. I believed that everything, from a stubborn mule to a broken plow, could be understood and managed with patience and a firm hand. The war taught me that some things are not meant to be understood. It taught me that the earth is impartial. It will drink blood just as readily as it drinks rain. People today, they read about Kursk in their books. They see numbers, thousands of tanks, millions of men. They see it as a grand clash of empires. But when you're there on the ground, it's not grand, it's small. It shrinks your world down to the few meters of trench in front of you. And for me, on a blistering day in July of '43, it wasn't about empires or ideologies. It began, as most terrible things do, with the taste of dust and a sky that was about to break. The air itself was a living thing, heavy, pregnant with steel. We were dug in near Orel, part of the 78th Sturm, assault troops. The best, they told us, but the Russian earth didn't care about our collar tabs. The sun beat down on the steppe, baking the ground into a cracked, pale drum. Every gust of wind was a puff of fine, yellow dust that coated your teeth, got in your eyes, and seasoned the dry bread in your pack. It was a farmer's nightmare, a land so vast and flat it felt like God had forgotten to finish it. The black soil, the asterisk Chernosem asterisk, they called it, so rich. I'd run it through my fingers and think of my own fields back home, how this soil could feed a nation. Instead, we were feeding it our dead. Lieutenant Weber was shouting, his voice thin and sharp against the low, constant rumble from the east. A counterattack, the words meant little. It was just another order to move from one hole in the ground to another, probably less safe, hole in the ground. We were supposed to blunt an armored spearhead, blunt it, as if we were a tool and they were just a piece of metal. My world was the sweat stinging my eyes, the familiar weight of the Car 98K in my hands, the rough wool of my tunic itching my neck. I remember seeing a field of sunflowers to our left, their heads bowed low, scorched and blackened by shell fire. They looked like a crowd of grieving old men. I checked my machine pistol, the MP40. Its cool, metallic logic was comforting, simple mechanism. Reliable, I understood it. Unlike the chaos that was brewing, the air began to whine. A high, thin sound that grew into a guttural shriek. Everyone knew that sound. It wasn't the throaty cough of our own artillery. This was the asterisk Stalinorgel asterisk Stalin's organ, a sound that didn't just want to kill you, it wanted to tear your soul out first. The sky ripped open. The world dissolved into noise and pressure. It was not a series of explosions. It was one continuous, earth-shattering roar. The ground beneath me bucked and heaved like a dying animal. Dirt, stones, and shimmering pieces of hot metal rained down. I was curled in on myself, my helmet ringing like a church bell, my teeth rattling in my skull. My thoughts were stripped gears, grinding uselessly. Don't think, just breathe. Find the earth, hold on to it. Then a new sound, the deep, guttural growl of engines, T-34s. They came out of the smoke and dust like prehistoric beasts, impossibly fast, their long cannons spitting fire. They didn't drive over our lines, they plowed through them. The world became a series of fractured moments. A man next to me, Klaus, a boy from Munich who loved to draw, simply vanished in a red spray. The sharp crack of a Panzerfaust. A gout of flame from a tank's turret. The screams, so many screams. We were overrun. It happened so fast. There was no line anymore. Just islands of gray-clad men drowning in a sea of olive green. Lieutenant Weber was yelling to fall back to the secondary trench, but his words were swallowed by the engine of a tank that ground our machine gun nest into the dirt. I saw it coming. Fired my last magazine at the infantry clinging to its sides. It was like throwing stones at a tidal wave. Then came the shell that was meant for me. It didn't explode with a bang. It was a flash of pure white light and a fist of pressure that picked me up and threw me. My world went silent, utterly, completely silent. I was floating in a thick white void. I remember thinking very calmly, so this is it. This is what death feels like. When sound returned, it was with a sickening, wet roar. I was lying in a crater. The air smelled of burnt sugar, cordite, and cooked meat. My head throbbed. I was alone. My squad, my platoon, my company, all gone, swallowed by the black earth. The battle had moved on, rolled over me and past me. I was behind it. I was behind them. Panic, cold and sharp, tried to take hold. But years of watching the sky, of knowing when a storm would break, of understanding the temperament of the land, that kicked in. The farmer in me took over from the soldier. The soldier was lost. The farmer knew this place. It was just Earth. And I knew Earth. For the next few days I became a ghost. I moved only in the gray hours of dawn and the deep purple of twilight. The sun was my enemy. The open fields were a death sentence. I lived in ditches, in thickets of withered brush, in the shadows of shattered farmhouses. I used the sun and the stars to navigate, just as my grandfather had taught me. I saw the way the moss grew on the north side of the few remaining trees. I followed the small game trails, knowing they would lead to water. My key skill, they called it in training, reading the land. Here, it was the only thing keeping me alive. My hunger was a physical pain, a dull ache that sat deep in my gut. I found wild berries, the kind my mother warned me were for the birds, but my desperation was greater than my caution. They were sour and stained my lips purple. I found a stream and drank the rust-colored water, praying it wouldn't kill me. The landscape was a canvas of ruin. Charred skeletons of tanks, both ours and theirs, littered the fields like giant, dead beetles. The sunflowers were all gone now, trampled into the mud. One evening, hiding in the ruins of what must have been a small village church, I saw it, the thing that broke the last gear in my mind. A Soviet patrol was marching a group of their own men, maybe 20 of them, into a shallow ravine. The prisoners were exhausted, their uniforms in tatters. They weren't resisting. An officer with a blue-banded cap read something from a piece of paper, his voice a flat, angry bark that carried on the wind. Then another man, a commissar, walked down the line with a pistol. He didn't hesitate. A series of flat, popping sounds, one after another. Men who had survived the hell I had just crawled out of, executed by their own side. For what? For retreating, for surviving. I lay there, my face pressed into the dirt, the smell of old incense and damp stone in my nostrils, and something inside me just snapped. The speeches from back home, the talk of destiny, of the fatherland, of a glorious future, it all evaporated. It was meaningless noise, a lie you tell boys to get them to die. Here, in this ravine, was the truth of it. It wasn't a war of ideas, it was a slaughterhouse. We weren't lions fighting for a cause. We were cattle, all of us, on both sides, being driven into the abattoir by men with clipboards and clean uniforms. My fight for Germany ended right there. My new war, my only war, was the fight to get back to my farm in Brandenburg. My motivation was no longer a flag. It was the memory of the scent of my own soil. That realization changed me. I was no longer a lost German soldier. I was just Hans, an animal trying to get back to its burrow. I became more cautious, more patient. I watched a column of Russian supply trucks for a whole day, learning their route, their timing. I moved with the wind, using the whisper of the tall grass to cover the sound of my movement. I thought of the foxes that used to plague our henhouse, how they could move unseen. I became a fox. I don't know how many days it was. Time had lost its meaning. There was only sunrise and sunset, hunger and fear. Finally, one morning through the haze, I heard it. The familiar, comforting chatter of an MG-42, German. My heart hammered against my ribs. I crawled for another kilometer, my body screaming, until I saw the field gray uniforms in a hastily dug trench. I had made it. I was back. I spent the rest of my life as a farmer. After the war, I returned home. The house was still standing. My family was alive. I went back to the old rhythms, to the honest logic of the land. But I never again looked at a field of wheat without seeing the endless plains of Kursk. I never again felt the summer sun on my neck without remembering the heat of that burning steppe. The war broke my faith in the contract between man and earth. I spent decades fixing what was broken on my farm. Fences, tractors, barns, but I never again believed that everything could be fixed. Kursk taught me that sometimes you can pour your blood and soul into the soil, and all it will give you back is bones. It grows death just as easily as it grows life. The earth doesn't choose a side, it just endures. It takes us all in the end. The hardest lesson is this: grand ideas are for men in warm rooms. On the battlefield, there is no right and wrong, no glorious cause. There is only survival. You don't choose between good and evil. You choose between getting home and being buried in foreign soil, and you spend the rest of your life trying to justify the choice you made. This memory is a piece of shrapnel I carry. It's heavy. Help me carry it. Subscribe and ensure these stories are never left to rust in silence.